A rare day off work. This would usually mean a day's fishing somewhere, and this day was no different. But where to go? That was the question. It was early December, cold, with a scattering of storms thrown in for good measure. The evenings were fishing well, but the daytime angling, well, let's just say not as fruitful as it could be. My usual trudge across the shingle was one of expectation, wondering if there would be any other anglers, any dog walkers, and of course whether or not I'd catch anything. The Solent is famous for being rubbish during the day, so I went into this with a mindset that even a crab would be a success. When I arrived, I was delighted with the conditions. A slight swell, nothing too hectic, very few people about, and practically the beach to myself where other fish seekers were concerned. Thinking back to a few weeks prior, when I had some success catching a thornback ray whilst fishing one Saturday morning with my little James, I wondered if I might emulate that success, so I decided that I'd head back to the coffee cup. The day was relatively pleasing given the time of year, chilly at around 7 degrees but with very little in the way of wind, and clearish skies with the odd patch of sunshine were forecast. I was spoilt. I've fallen in love once more with my Anyfish Anywhere 13-foot forum baits, and coupled these with the Fathom 15s, and make a lovely pairing. I went a combination of 2-hook pumpy loop rigs for distance and 2-hook flappers for closer in. Sand eel, squid, mackerel, bluey and anchovies decorated my size 2 Barravas BMX hooks. I cast the loop rig at around 100 yards, and the flapper at around 60. With the rods doing their thing, I was at liberty to sit back and watch the sea. The rods were fairly quiet as expected. The tide pulled hard from left to right, and after 30 or so minutes I went through the motions of freshening up the hook baits and recasting. There were more birds on the beach that day than people, crows, gulls, and I was even visited by a flock of small wading birds. They might have been dandlings, I get slightly confused with the species, but they were delightful all the same. I find the sound of the water lapping against the shingle soothing, the gulls' voices calming, the deep drone from the tankers, and even the wind in the air. All these things make up the soundtrack of the beach. It can be any beach. They're all similar, yet all unique in their own way. I decided to set up my barbel rod as it was getting close to the top of the tide, and attached a mackerel head to a size 5/0 circle hook, slung in close, in the hope that there was a big old bass patrolling. A sleeper rod, chuck it out and forget about it. Probably won't see any action, but it definitely won't if it's not out there. In it to win it. I enjoy concocting various bait combinations too, hoping to stumble upon something that works, and honing my skills, trying my best to create neat, streamlined fingerlings of bait that the fish might find too good to turn down. I received a sharp rattle on the rod tip, a bite at last. I wound it in half expecting a whiting, but was met with a dogfish and a whelk. Dogfish can be a pain when they're queued up of an evening and you can't get through them, but on a quiet session they can be quite welcome, saving the blank and fueling optimism. In a bucket of water, it can be quite fun watching them swim around for a couple of minutes before releasing them. They're really quite cool. I enjoy casting too, something I've struggled with in years gone by, but with a little persistence I've developed a better style and can now fish at ranges I've always wanted to fish at. I'm no tournament caster, don't get me wrong, but I can fish comfortably and confidently now. I like to use my version of a pendulum cast when it's a little more distance I'm after, although the layback cast and even sometimes an off the ground cast can produce a similar range. I guess it's all about practicing at the end of the day and what you enjoy doing. The more you do something, the better you'll get at it. Or perhaps eventually give it up as a bad idea. Take your pick. Just before high tide, the water ripped through. The light rods I was using would only cast 5 ounces, and that was at a push. I repositioned the tripod to get a better angle of the lines in the hope of holding the bottom better. I also upped the ante with regards to my baiting tactics, trying black lug and squid wraps, mackerel and bluey wraps, everything in my armoury to try and entice a bite. Perseverance is key, but it was all great fun as well. I felt as though I was fishing well enough, alternating casting ranges, mixing up the baits, freshening up after every 20 minutes. But it was never a chore. I love it. It can't always be easy. It can't always be fast and frantic. Sometimes it's nice to find a lull in the fishing in order to enjoy fully what's around you. We all know the busy sessions can whiz by in the blink of an eye, but sometimes it's nice to slow the pace, stop, and smell the roses. A quick look at the phone told me I had half an hour left until my parking ticket ran out. It was bang on high water anyway, and I felt that I'd had the best of the tide. Any more would have just been flogging a dead horse, I think. Time to see out the last casts that were out there, and begin to think about tidying the camp. Always a sad time for me, packing up time, but it does mean I can get back to reality, back to those who depend on me, and those I depend on. With festivities looming, it's a busy old time, so finding a few hours here and there to fish can be tricky. That said, whatever you do, you must find time for yourself. It cleanses the mind, it keeps us sane, it keeps us functioning correctly. It may well be a week until I manage to get out again, perhaps with friends, perhaps on my own. I'll be happy either way. This large box strapped to my back, the long holdall and the bucket are just props I bring along in order to enjoy time at my favourite places. Lucky for me, using them is great fun.